Hey guys, welcome back to the View Cryptos channel. So today the cryptocurrency market, the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market is above $1 trillion and $600 billion. Bitcoin is above $52,000. So this is really huge. We're again in the green and cryptocurrencies are going mainstream. I want to show you this tweet from Julia Chatterley. In the digital world, closer to 43% of every dollar is spent on a Visa card. Al Kelly, CEO at Visa, talks digital payments, setting up on-ramps for digital currency use and central bank coins. Let's listen to this discussion here. It's really very bullish and very interesting.
Now cash is out, cards are king as we shift our pandemic spending habits. Visa earnings show a sharp rise in tap-to-pay transactions worldwide. And while consumer spending outlook is blunted by the pandemic, Visa is planning to make crypto a safe, viable payment method in the future too. Often mistaken for a credit card company, Visa brands itself as a payments technology firm. And last year, just to give you a sense, it processed over 140 billion transactions worth $8.8 trillion in terms of volume. And I'm excited to say Al Kelly is the CEO of Visa and joins us now. Al, fantastic to have you on the show. You have a lot going on. That was just a little flavor. Welcome to the show. As I mentioned there, the pandemic has accelerated shifts in all sorts of ways, the rise in e-commerce, digital payments. There's also been huge challenges for individuals too. Just give us a sense of where we are and what you're seeing as the rest of the year pans out.
Well, Julia, it's fantastic to be with you. Thank you. Certainly, this pandemic has been a game changer on so many fronts, and it's impacted many industries, including ours. I think the headline is that domestic debit and digital is the story. Domestic volume, except for the early days of the pandemic, has largely held up quite well. And it's been driven by people using debit cards for various reasons, including the fact that they feel more comfortable in tough times spending their money versus borrowing money. Additionally, in countries like the United States, where stimulus money was put directly into demand deposit accounts linked to our debit cards, that certainly drove volume on debit as well. And probably the biggest story is digital. People who couldn't no longer travel, saw stores shut down, their favorite restaurants no longer allowing people to sit inside. People went digital, and many millions of people around the world for the first time activated in e-commerce, and we have seen massive adoption. And I think probably, Julia, we've experienced a couple of years worth of acceleration in digital in the last 9 to 11 months, driven by the pandemic and people sitting home. If we look at the holiday season, particularly in the United States, it was amazing where we certainly continue to see a drop off in people traveling. But a lot of that volume was made up from people sitting at home, looking on their computer and shopping for all kinds of things, from everyday items to more discretionary items. So I think the key to things to watch as we look forward is to what degree and at what pace do the vaccines happen? How comfortable are people going into things like restaurants and stores that might get a little bit more crowded? What happens in terms of government restrictions relative to the pandemic? And lastly, how much borders open up? One of the biggest negative impacts for the consumer has been the fact that people have been very uncomfortable getting on airplanes and flying. And that trend largely continues today.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many important points in there and things that we simply don't know, and we have to wait and see how the economy and how the pandemic pans out, literally. But there will be viewers watching this going, what does the rise in particularly digital payments mean for Visa specifically? And that was why I took the time to explain exactly what you do in the introduction, because I saw a great stat from you guys that for all the point I made, cash is out and debit is king. There was still $18 trillion worth of money spent in cash and checks. That's your statistic. And I do think we need to remember still in the underlying economy what is going on for all the shift that we're seeing.
Absolutely, and 4.5 trillion of that spending on cash and check is in the United States. The move into digital is very, very powerful for us. The reality is that in any given day in the face-to-face world, about 15 cents of every dollar is spent on a Visa card. In the digital world, closer to 43% of every dollar is spent on a Visa card or a Visa credential. And that is because cash, which is one of our biggest competitors in the face-to-face world, is not a competitor in the digital world. I haven't found anybody yet capable of stuffing currency into an iPhone or to a tablet or to a computer. So with cash not being and check not being an option, it is an extremely positive trend for a transaction processing company like ours.
Oh, the statistic on your point about how digital cash is spent is critically important, I think, for people to understand. One of the other things that you're doing, and we're talking about this a lot right now, is what is the strategy as far as the crypto space is concerned? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see sort of two paths in terms of your vision here. One is facilitating what I know you're very passionate about, which is financial inclusion and allowing or facilitating people to invest in crypto or digital assets if they want to accumulate wealth and think there's a way to do that. But the other thing is the network effect. So allowing people to transact between cryptocurrencies, let's use Bitcoin as an example, transact and swap that into fiat currency and then spend it. Are those the two paths?
Well, we want to be in the middle of any movement of funds, and we don't try to decide what's going to take off or not take off, and we don't pick winners and losers. We just get ready to enable whatever could possibly happen. And I think crypto is an exciting trend. There's cryptocurrencies, which are kind of the digital gold. Think of Bitcoin, and there what we're trying to do is create utility, which first of all making sure that our Visa cards are used to be able to purchase Bitcoin, and then when somebody wants to convert their Bitcoin to a fiat currency, use a Visa credential to go shop at our 70 million merchants around the world. So we're trying to create that utility. In digital currencies, we really see them as a potential player in global commerce going forward. And we're doing a number of things to make sure that we enable that to happen if, in fact, that's what consumers want to have happen. So we're working with 35 of the biggest the biggest crypto wallets around the world, making sure that these various digital currencies can be converted into a fiat currency, and that money can then be spent from a Visa card in a wallet, and again, at any one of our 70 million merchants around the world. We're also looking to make sure that we can, and we've been working on our infrastructure for 18 months to make sure that we can enable digital settlement. Today, we allowed transactions in 160 currencies, and we settled in the evening on 25 different currencies. Over time, I looked at for us to be able to settle in cryptocurrencies, and we're experimenting with that right now with a couple of issuers, and over time with acquirers. And then last week, I think it was, we announced a set of crypto APIs, which are basically allowing a bank for their customers to have an on-ramp through their mobile app or through their website to be able to go buy, trade, and custody cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. And our first pilot is with First Boulevard, a company that's focused on the Black community in the United States and trying to help them get to a state where they're more financially included in the mainstream. And that's something that's extremely important to us. The bottom line is that I don't know whether crypto will be adopted and at what pace it will be adopted, but we are ready to go, and we're leading the marketplace by a lot in terms of setting up the on-ramps for people to be able to facilitate using these various digital currencies.
If it's happening, you want to be there. We're talking a lot about what we call decentralized coins, but what about, because there will be people looking at this who know something about digital and digital assets like these and saying they're too volatile, you can't spend these, the transaction costs are too high. What about paving the way one day, and central banks are clearly talking about this as being a facilitator of using central bank digital money, so a Fed coin, a Bank of England coin. Can you envisage a future where that becomes perhaps a bigger part of the network than any of these individual coins that we've just mentioned?
Oh, I certainly can. And we're in conversations with a number of central banks around the world about various private public partnerships where a network like ours globally can really help a central bank that tends to focus obviously on their single domestic market. And we have a network that spans virtually every country and territory in the world, and we can help facilitate much wider utility in terms of buying if these central bank digital currencies take off. And I think there's likelihood that they might, and I think that they could be a vehicle that helps uplift some of the 1.7 billion people around the world who today, Julia, are outside the financial mainstream. And that's an objective that we share. We want all people to be in the financial mainstream, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to enable that to happen. It's going to take a long time, but we're patient and we're in it for the long term to make it happen.
Extremely bullish, guys. This is really crazy. Things are really happening. And also MasterCard also will be in the game. MasterCard will let merchants accept payments in crypto this year. So let's
money again. On the payment side, our own Danny Nelson on CoinDesk broke the news that MasterCard is going to allow merchants to start accepting cryptocurrencies this year. Now, this is a huge play just because that customer base and because that infrastructure is all there already. And, we still have yet to get exact details about what cryptocurrencies they're going to support, but those are going to be coming down the pipe. Sort of similarly, Twitter is also going to be accepting payments on the platform. It looks like they're experimenting with letting users, tip other accounts and things like that. So we can see more transacting here. We're just seeing money start to move. So the group, what does it think? I have my thoughts, but tell me, how does this news hit you?
I think it's pretty cool. Although we have seen payments on Twitter through third parties for a long time. When Twitter just didn't jump on the bandwagon for so long, you had all these other companies picking up the slack. And so you've had all kinds of tipper bots operating on Twitter. I use them all the time to tip people. And then you had Brave. You can, they started integrating with Twitter so that you can click on it and send people Brave tips with basic attention tokens. So this is not a new phenomenon, but I think this will take it to the mainstream. So before you had kind of fringe people like myself using these things, but having Twitter actually integrate it natively, that's kind of cool. Jen, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I also think it's super cool. The question that popped into my head when I was reading the MasterCard story is, it's really cool that they're going to allow merchants to accept crypto, but what's it going to take to get merchants to accept crypto? And I don't know what the answer is there. Like, how do we encourage this mainstream adoption when it comes to people accepting payments? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a stab at it. Tax law has to change. I think that's something that needs to change, honestly. Yeah. I would take payment in Bitcoin from CoinDesk if I could. I mean, it's what, 300% up in 2020? Yeah, of course I get paid in Bitcoin, but I don't want to take the tax liability, and I know merchants don't either. So I think that is probably one of the bigger reasons. Volatility also, of course, for merchants. But hand it over to Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with Will. I'm like super bearish on Bitcoin as a payments vehicle at this point in time, largely because of the tax questions that exist. Where this gets really interesting to me is around stablecoins such as USDC. If USDC effectively becomes a widely accepted currency for purchases, and also a currency that you can get yield on for just letting it sit in your Coinbase account, I think that becomes a pretty interesting possible future where one could necessarily kind of exist outside of the fiat system as long as you're able to get money into the crypto system to begin with. So when we talk about stable coins running on these networks, that's where I start to be interested. But the idea that people are going to start like buying stuff with Bitcoin, we've seen this story before. Those cards are out there. No one's doing it. But if there's widely accepted by merchants, and if we're talking about stable coins rather than volatile assets that people can just, are seeing as investments, I think then it gets really interesting. Ben.
Yeah, and didn't Danny Nelson hint at that in his reporting that, stable coins seem to be the most likely vehicle here in some ways?
Yeah, and shout out to that Danny piece. Huge scoop, but also really well done, really well written in terms of, hey, they may be building it, but will people come? And especially with Bitcoin, I think the answer may be no. But on stablecoins, I think the answer could be yes. Should we see the wide stream adoption on the merchant end? But we'll see.
Yeah, and they referenced that a little bit, I believe. In MasterCard's blog post confirming the news that came after the story, they said, we're not encouraging adoption. We just want to give people options. And so that seems to be the play that they're making here in some ways. I think, Naomi, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people who are living off the grid entirely on crypto, which is kind of cool. They're buying all their groceries in crypto, they're paying for fuel, they're using things like BitRefill and Purse.io and other things like that, but it's definitely not mainstream. And you're right, it's the tax issue is a huge issue for people. Either you have to do it off the grid or you have to go through hell trying to figure out how to report all of this stuff. But also just finding merchants is difficult because, as you said, unless you're in the crypto space, and luckily, like where these people are living, there are lots of merchants who accept it without any third party.
Where are these people living, Naomi?
These people are in places like Townsville and Queensland. They're in New Hampshire. They're in there are pockets all over the world where you have these communities living off crypto. It's super cool. That's a future I want to see, but it's we're not there yet because the tax issue is a really difficult issue.
Okay, so crypto is really going mainstream. That's it, guys. If you want to support the channel, you can like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time.